2:47 a.m. on the luxury yacht Golden Mirage, anchored in the Persian Gulf. The night was still, with only the gentle lapping of waves against the hull breaking the silence. Rafiz Nazari, the night shift pool attendant, was making his final rounds before the end of his shift when something caught his eye in the infinity pool. Something that shouldn't have been there at this hour. The moonlight reflected off the water's surface, briefly obscuring what floated there. But as Rafiz moved closer, his blood ran cold. A woman's body, face down, her designer gown billowing around her like exotic sea flora, dark hair fanning out across the water's surface. It was Maya Santos, the stylist who had been a fixture in Abu Dhabi's elite circles for the past 18 months. The woman whose rise from obscurity had become the stuff of whispered gossip among the wealthy. Now she floated lifelessly in the infinity pool of one of the most expensive private yachts in the world, surrounded by some of the most powerful men in the Middle East. Rafiz's panicked call to security set off a chain of events that would expose a web of desire, deception, and deadly ambition. Within hours, the yacht was swarming with police, but not just any investigators. Detective Zain Al-Fayez, the Abu Dhabi Police Department's most discreet and effective investigator, was personally requested. By whom and why would become one of the many questions surrounding Maya's death. Initial assessment suggests accidental drowning, the medical examiner said, kneeling beside the pool where Maya's body had been carefully placed after retrieval. But there are inconsistencies I'd like to examine further. Detective Kazem nodded, her keen eyes taking in the scene. The infinity pool, designed to create the illusion of water extending infinitely into the Persian Gulf, now seemed like a stage set for tragedy. Around her, the yacht's luxurious amenities, the handcrafted teak decking, the crystal chandeliers visible through panoramic windows, the helicopter pad on the upper deck, spoke of wealth beyond measure. And with wealth, Kazem knew, came power. Power that could impede even the most determined investigation. Who was on board? Kazem asked the yacht's visibly nervous security chief. 52 guests, detective. It was a private celebration. Names. The security chief hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but enough for Kazem to notice. Zain Al-Fayez, the owner, and his closest associates. The Royal Four, Kazem finished for him. Even she, with her professional detachment, couldn't hide her recognition of that notorious quartet of billionaires who controlled vast portions of the UAE's economy. I'll need a complete guest list, and no one leaves until I've spoken with them. But even as she gave the order, Kazem felt the weight of invisible pressure bearing down. The men whose party had been interrupted by death were not accustomed to being questioned, detained, or denied. And a woman floating dead in a pool could be very inconvenient indeed. Before we dive deeper into the mystery surrounding Maya Santos's death, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. The twists ahead in this true crime investigation will reveal how ambition, betrayal, and power converge into a perfect storm of deadly consequence. Hit that notification bell to make sure you don't miss a single detail of this riveting case. Maya Santos hadn't always moved in circles of unimaginable wealth. Her story began in the crowded streets of Tondo, one of Manila's poorest districts, where dreams often died before they could take root. The youngest of 4 children in a family struggling to survive, Maya learned early that beauty could be both a blessing and a burden. Her striking features, high cheekbones, almond eyes, and a grace that seemed incongruous with her surroundings, drew attention, not all of it welcome. School was a luxury the family could barely afford, but Maya was determined. She worked mornings at a local market, attended classes in the afternoon, and studied by candlelight when electricity was cut off due to unpaid bills. Her notebooks were filled not just with academic notes but with sketches, clothing designs, color combinations, style ideas gleaned from discarded fashion magazines she collected from trash bins outside tourist hotels. At 17, Maya landed her first real job at a small boutique catering to middle-class Filipinas. By 19, she had caught the eye of Marco Santos, an aspiring fashion designer 3 years her senior, whose family owned a small tailoring shop. Their courtship was brief and practical. 2 ambitious young people recognizing in each other the hunger to escape the limitations of their birth. "You have an eye," Marco told her on their third date, flipping through her collection of sketches and style ideas. "I have the technical skills. Together, we could build something." The wedding was small, held in the Santos family's modest apartment above their shop. Maya wore a dress she had designed herself, sewn by Marco's father. The honeymoon was a weekend in a budget hotel in Manila. And then reality set in. Marco's talent was real but limited. His designs were competent but lacked the spark that separates the merely good from the truly great. The tailoring business barely sustained his parents. It certainly couldn't support a young couple with ambitious dreams. Arguments about money began within months of the wedding. "You don't understand what it takes," Marco would shout after another design was rejected by a potential buyer. "The industry is rigged. It's all about connections, not talent." Maya listened, sympathized, but privately began to formulate her own plan. If connections were the currency of success, then she would find a way to accumulate them. The first step was securing a position at Makati, one of Manila's high-end department stores. The pay was minimal, but the exposure was invaluable. Maya watched, learned, and absorbed everything. How wealthy women spoke, moved, made decisions about their wardrobes. She studied international fashion magazines during breaks, teaching herself about designers, fabrics, and trends. Most importantly, she began to develop her own aesthetic, a unique blend of Western luxury with subtle Asian influences that caught the attention of her supervisors. Within a year, she was promoted to personal shopping assistant for the store's VIP clients. By 23, she had built a modest reputation among Manila's elite as someone with an exceptional eye for style. At home, Marco's frustrations grew. His designs remained unsold, his ambitions thwarted by lack of opportunity and, though he wouldn't admit it, creative limitation. The small apartment they had moved into became a pressure cooker of resentment and unfulfilled dreams. "You spend all day helping rich women look beautiful while I'm stuck altering pants for middle-aged businessmen," he complained one evening after Maya returned late from work. "What about our dreams? What about our boutique?" Maya's response was pragmatic. "I'm learning, Marco. Every client, every connection, it's all preparation. We need patience." But patience was in short supply, and their marriage began to show the strain of divergent paths. Maya's star slowly rising while Marco remained anchored to his family's modest business. Something had to change, and fate, in its capricious way, was about to intervene. The 2022 Abu Dhabi Fashion Week wasn't the largest or most prestigious in the international fashion calendar, but it was gaining reputation as a showcase for emerging talent and a gateway to the immensely wealthy Gulf market. Maya's supervisor at Makati, impressed by her work with VIP clients, recommended her as an assistant stylist to a Filipino designer participating in the event. "It's only for 2 weeks," Maya told Marco as she packed. "But the connections could be invaluable for us." The "us" was strategic, a reminder that her ambitions included him, though the gap between their professional trajectories had widened into a chasm. Marco's response was a mixture of resentment and hope. "Just don't forget where you came from," he said, helping her zip the single suitcase containing everything she owned that might be appropriate for such an event. And who was there at the beginning? The opulence of Abu Dhabi was a shock to Maya's system. The gleaming skyscrapers, the impossible wealth on casual display, the sense that anything could be purchased if one had sufficient funds. It was a world away from Tondo, from Makati, from the cramped apartment she shared with an increasingly bitter husband. Her role at the Fashion Week was minor: steaming garments, arranging accessories, ensuring models were properly dressed before runway appearances. But Maya approached each task with the same attention to detail that had distinguished her work in Manila. She watched, learned, and positioned herself where she could be most useful. The pivotal moment came on the third day of the event, minutes before a major presentation. The designer, already stressed, was faced with a wardrobe emergency when a zipper broke on a key piece intended for the opening look. As panic erupted backstage, Maya stepped forward with a solution: a clever draping technique using a luxurious scarf that transformed the damaged garment into something even more striking. "Who did this?" a deep voice asked from behind her as the model took to the runway in the modified design. Maya turned to find herself face to face with Zain Al-Fayez, the 48-year-old oil magnate whose investment had made the fashion week possible. His presence backstage was unexpected. His interest in a quick wardrobe fix even more so. "I did, sir," Maya replied, meeting his gaze directly. Zain studied her for a moment, noting both her beauty and the confidence with which she carried herself despite her junior position. "You have good instincts," he said finally, "and quick thinking, both valuable qualities." The moment might have ended there, a brief compliment from a powerful man to a young woman he would never encounter again. But later that evening, as Maya was assisting with the packing of the designer's collection, a message arrived. Zain Al-Fayez would like to discuss a potential employment opportunity. The initial meeting was brief and professional. Zain needed a personal stylist and shopper, someone who could ensure his wardrobe reflected his status for various international business engagements. The position offered a salary that made Maya momentarily dizzy, more money than she and Marco might earn in 5 years in Manila. "I'll need to discuss this with my husband," she said, maintaining her composure despite the internal earthquake of possibility. Zain nodded, respecting her consideration of marital consultation but clearly accustomed to getting what he wanted. "The position is available if you want it. Let me know by tomorrow." That night, in a video call to Marco from her modest hotel room, Maya laid out the opportunity in careful terms. "It's a 6-month contract initially. The salary is significant. We could save almost everything I earn." Marco's initial reaction was predictable: concern about their separation, questions about the propriety of a young woman working so closely with a powerful older man. But the numbers Maya quoted silenced his objections. 6 months, Marco said finally, calculation replacing concern in his expression. "Maybe a year. We'll have enough to start our own boutique." The Santos Maya brand we've always talked about. It was a pivotal moment in their marriage, the point where ambition overtook emotion, where calculation replaced connection. Neither of them fully recognized it then, but they had just taken the first step on a path that would lead to the infinity pool of the golden mirage. "This is just business," Maya reassured herself as she signed the contract the next day. A means to an end. Zain arranged for her relocation to a luxury apartment in Etihad Towers, a complex of skyscrapers that dominated the Abu Dhabi skyline. The 2-bedroom residence was larger than the entire building that housed Maya's family in Tondo. The closet alone was bigger than the bedroom she shared with Marco in Manila. "You need to look the part," Zain explained during their first professional meeting. "Your appearance reflects on me. Consider your wardrobe an investment in our business relationship." The shopping allowance he provided was more than Maya's annual salary at SM Makati. Her first purchases were conservative but elegant, designer pieces that would help her blend in with the rarefied world she now inhabited without calling attention to herself. But as the weeks passed, as her confidence grew, Maya's personal style evolved into something more distinctive, drawing admiring glances from the Emirati elite she encountered in Zain's orbit. Her primary responsibility was curating Zain's wardrobe for various occasions, but her role expanded as he recognized her broader talents. Soon she was advising on interior design elements for his residences, selecting gifts for his business associates, even providing input on the aesthetic aspects of corporate events. The first significant transfer of money to Marco came after 6 weeks, $50,000, a fortune by Philippine standards. Maya's message accompanying the transfer was brief: "For the boutique fund, starting small as we discussed." Marco's reply came with photos of a modest commercial space he had leased in a developing area of Manila. "This is just the beginning. Keep it coming." If you're finding this story as compelling as our viewers do, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing you these in-depth investigations into the dark side of wealth and power. As months passed, Maya's position in Zain's life became increasingly complex. Their professional relationship remained impeccable. She was efficient, intuitive about his needs, and able to anticipate the image he wished to project in various contexts. But there was an undeniable personal element developing between them. Zain began seeking her company even when no styling was required. Dinners where business was discussed but not the primary focus. invitations to cultural events where he seemed more interested in her reactions than in the performances themselves. Maya maintained appropriate boundaries with practiced grace, but she was not immune to Zain's charisma. Unlike Marco, whose ambition outstripped his abilities, Zain had built his father's modest oil company into a global energy conglomerate through genuine intelligence and vision. His conversation was stimulating, his knowledge of the world extensive, his interest in her opinions seemingly genuine. The ethical complexity of her situation was not lost on Maya. Each time she transferred money to Marco, and the sums grew larger as her value to Zain increased, she rationalized her actions as necessary steps toward their shared dream. "This is just business," became her mantra, repeated silently as Zain's hand lingered on her arm during an introduction, as his eyes held hers a moment too long over dinner, as the gifts he provided became increasingly personal. But even as she maintained this fiction with herself, Maya recognized the growing emotional complexity of her position. Zain was no longer simply an employer. He was becoming someone whose approval she craved, whose disappointment she feared, whose attention increasingly shaped her sense of self-worth. And somewhere in the Persian Gulf, the infinity pool of the golden mirage awaited, the stage for a tragedy set in motion by ambition, opportunity, and the dangerous belief that one could control forces far more powerful than oneself. If this first chapter of Maya Santos's journey from the slums of Manila to the luxury yachts of Abu Dhabi has captivated you, stay tuned. The story is about to take a dramatic turn as we explore her deepening entanglement with Zain Al-Fayez and her fateful introduction to the Royal Four, the brotherhood of billionaires whose lives she would infiltrate with catastrophic consequences. The transformation of Maya and Zain's relationship from professional to personal was as gradual as it was inevitable. What began as respectful admiration evolved into lingering glances, casual touches, and conversations that extended far beyond wardrobe selections. 3 months into her employment, Maya found herself dining with Zain at his private residence, ostensibly to discuss upcoming events, but the business agenda quickly gave way to more personal exchanges. Zain Al-Fayez was unlike any man Maya had ever encountered. Harvard-educated with an MBA that had transformed his father's modest oil drilling operation into Al-Fayez Global Energy, a conglomerate with holdings across 5 continents. At 48, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had never known true material want, yet possessed enough self-awareness to recognize his privilege. "My father insisted I work on the rigs every summer during university," Zain told Maya one evening as they shared a bottle of prohibitively expensive wine on the terrace of his penthouse. 16-hour days in blistering heat alongside men who had no Ivy League future. "It was the most valuable education I received." Divorced for 6 years from a marriage that had been more strategic alliance than love match, Zain had no children, no heirs to his fortune estimated at over $12 billion. What he did have was an appreciation for beauty in all forms: art, architecture, innovation, and now Maya Santos. Their first kiss came during a private viewing at an exclusive gallery, surrounded by contemporary Middle Eastern art that would never be seen by the public. Their first night together followed a week later at his secluded beach house on a private island accessible only by helicopter. Maya's wedding ring remained on her finger throughout, a silent acknowledgement of a reality both chose to ignore. In public, Maya was presented as Zain's fashion consultant and cultural advisor, titles vague enough to justify her constant presence yet professional enough to maintain appearances. Abu Dhabi, for all its cosmopolitan aspirations, remained deeply conservative about unmarried relationships, particularly between Muslims and non-Muslims. The penalties for zina, sexual relations outside marriage, could be severe even for the wealthy. For Zain, discretion wasn't just about social appearances. It was about legal protection. The affair was conducted with meticulous care. Separate arrivals and departures at public events. No photographs together that might suggest intimacy. No overnight stays at his main residence where staff might gossip. For someone who had grown up with nothing, the stolen moments of extravagant intimacy were intoxicating to Maya. Private dining rooms in restaurants where a single meal cost more than her family's monthly income in Manila. Weekend trips to private villas in Oman, the Maldives, Seychelles. Designer clothing delivered in discreet packages with handwritten notes. The jewelry began appearing 6 months into their relationship. Not ostentatious pieces that might draw attention, but exquisite items selected with intimate knowledge of her taste. A platinum and diamond bracelet so delicate it seemed to float on her wrist. Pearl earrings harvested from the Gulf and set in a modern design by an artisan who created pieces only for the royal family. A ruby pendant whose provenance stretched back centuries, once worn by Persian royalty. Each gift came with the same message, spoken or implied. You are mine. Not with the crude possessiveness of ownership, but with the absolute certainty of a man accustomed to acquiring what he desired. Maya's transfers to Marco grew larger, more frequent. The boutique fund now held enough for a substantial launch, yet Marco's messages always pushed for more. The location I found is perfect, but the landlord wants 6 months rent up front. Or, we need to secure the exclusive contract with this supplier before someone else does. If you're finding Maya's story as compelling as I do, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. The introduction of the Royal Four is about to change everything, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Maya's first encounter with what she would later come to know as the Royal Four came 8 months after her arrival in Abu Dhabi. Zain had invited her to a weekend gathering at his desert compound, a modernist masterpiece of stone and glass rising from the dunes 2 hours outside the city. The occasion was presented as informal, just a few close friends. But Maya understood immediately that this invitation represented a significant elevation in her status. The Majlis, a traditional Arab gathering space, had been reimagined as a sunken conversation pit surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows framing the desert landscape. It was here that Maya first met the 3 men who, together with Zain, controlled the economic destiny of the UAE. Ryan Al-Nouri was the first to greet her, rising with fluid grace despite his imposing height. At 46, his salt and pepper hair and trimmed beard gave him a distinguished appearance that suited his position as head of Abu Dhabi's largest investment bank. His family's connections to the ruling Al Nahyan dynasty went back generations, providing access that no amount of money could buy. So you're the styling genius who's been keeping our Zain looking presentable, Ryan said, his British accent reflecting years at Eton and Oxford. A significant improvement, I must say. Khalil Haddad approached next, his handshake firm, his assessment of Maya swift and professional. 43. With the physique of someone who made time for the gym despite punishing work hours, Khalil had transformed Abu Dhabi's skyline through his development company. The Haddad Group had built 6 of the city's most iconic towers and was currently developing an artificial island that would rival Palm Jumeirah in Dubai. The youngest of the group, Rami Bashara, hung back slightly, observing Maya with undisguised curiosity. At 38, his casual dress and relaxed demeanor contrasted with the others, reflecting his Silicon Valley background. After building and selling 2 tech companies in California, Rami had returned to the UAE to establish Oasis Technologies, bringing cutting-edge innovation to everything from desalination to solar energy. As the evening progressed, Maya observed the intricate dynamics between the 4 men. Their conversation flowed from English to Arabic and back, punctuated by inside jokes and references to shared experiences dating back decades. Though different in temperament and interests, they moved as a coordinated unit, each complementing the other's strengths. London School of Economics, 2002, Zain explained later as they lay in the master suite overlooking the moonlit desert. We were 4 Arab students with big ambitions and bigger family expectations. Ryan was aristocracy, Khalil was new money, Rami was the scholarship genius, and I was the oil heir trying to prove I was more than my father's son. What had begun as friendship evolved into a business alliance that now controlled banking, real estate, technology, and energy across the Emirates. Their ventures were separate but interconnected, each man supporting the other's initiatives, opening doors, providing capital when needed. They had weathered the 2008 financial crisis together, emerging stronger while others crumbled. We have a saying, Zain continued, tracing patterns on Maya's bare shoulder. We rise together, we fall together. It's not just business. These men are my brothers in every way that matters. Maya recognized the significance of being introduced to this inner circle. It was Zain's way of acknowledging their relationship had transcended mere discretion. Yet even as she was brought closer, forces were already in motion that would push them apart. The oil price crisis hit in early 2023, sending shockwaves through global markets. Al-Fayez Global Energy, with its diverse holdings, was better positioned than most to weather the storm, but Zain's presence was required across multiple continents to stabilize investments and reassure partners. What began as a week in London extended to a month, followed by meetings in Houston, Singapore, and Riyadh. Maya's role remained secure. Generous deposits continued to appear in her account. Video calls maintained their connection, but the physical and emotional distance grew. Alone in her luxury apartment, Maya began to recognize the precariousness of her position. Her entire existence in Abu Dhabi depended on Zain's interest. Without him, she had no independent legal status, no social connections beyond those he had provided. Marco's demands intensified during this period of separation. The boutique in Manila was now fully leased, renovations complete, inventory partially acquired. But his vision had expanded with each infusion of cash. "We need to capitalize now, Maya," he insisted during their encrypted video calls, "before he loses interest. You know how these men are, always looking for the next beautiful thing." Maya bristled at the implication but couldn't entirely dismiss it. She had witnessed the disposable nature of relationships among the elite. Beautiful women were abundant in Zain's world. Her unique value lay in understanding his needs, anticipating his desires. But for how long? The first significant lie came during Zain's third week away. Marco needed an additional $200,000 to secure an exclusive supplier relationship, a critical opportunity that couldn't wait for Zain's return. Maya fabricated a family emergency, a hospitalized parent requiring specialized treatment not covered by insurance. Zain transferred the money immediately, his concern appearing genuine even through the digital distance separating them. The ease of the deception disturbed Maya, yet she rationalized it as necessary for their long-term security. She and Marco established more sophisticated communication protocols, an encrypted messaging system that left no traces, separate email accounts accessed only through VPNs, a meticulous record of every gift, every transfer, every valuable item that passed through her hands. The boutique in Manila, now named Maya Marco Designs, was taking shape in her absence, funded entirely by her earnings from Zain. Marco sent regular updates, construction progress, interior design choices, meetings with potential staff. Their initial timeline of 6 months had extended considerably. "Maybe 2 years to set ourselves up properly," Marco suggested. "Build the brand, establish the clientele, create financial stability that doesn't depend on your consultant position." What Maya never directly acknowledged, even to herself, was how her documentation had evolved from business planning to potential leverage. The photos she saved weren't just of gifts or transfers, but of her access to exclusive locations and powerful people. Her recordings weren't just reminders of important conversations, but evidence of relationships that could damage reputations. As the weeks of separation stretched into months, Maya found herself not just maintaining records of her life with Zain, but methodically documenting the world he had introduced her to, a world she was increasingly determined never to leave, regardless of how his interest might wane. The next chapter in Maya's journey would take an even darker turn as isolation and opportunity combined to create a perfect storm of temptation and calculation. Stay with us as we explore how one woman's ambition led her to play an increasingly dangerous game with some of the most powerful men in the Middle East. A game that would ultimately end with her body floating in the infinity pool of the Golden Mirage. The first betrayal began with a chance encounter that, in retrospect, seemed too convenient to be truly accidental. Maya was browsing at the Galleria, Abu Dhabi's most exclusive shopping destination, seeking distraction during Zain's third consecutive month of international travel. As she examined a display of handcrafted scarves, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "His loss is our gain, it seems," said Ryan Al-Nouri, his tall figure reflected in the boutique's mirror. "Zain keeps you hidden away when he's in town. At least his absence allows the rest of us to appreciate your presence." The comment, delivered with a casual charm that diffused its forward nature, made Maya smile despite herself. Ryan suggested coffee, just a brief respite from shopping, and Maya found herself accepting. What harm could come from a simple conversation with her lover's closest friend? Coffee extended to lunch at a discreet restaurant where Ryan's family connections ensured absolute privacy. The conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Unlike Zain, whose focus remained primarily on business and current affairs, Ryan possessed a deep appreciation for literature and art that resonated with Maya's own interests. Zain mentioned you grew up with limited means, Ryan said as they lingered over dessert. Yet you speak about Persian poetry and Renaissance painting with remarkable insight. You're a fascinating contradiction, Maya Santos. His interest seemed genuine, his questions about her background respectful rather than voyeuristic. For someone who had spent months in relative isolation, the attention was intoxicating. Still, when Ryan suggested they continue their conversation at his private beach house on Saadiyat Island, Maya's instinct was to decline. Just as friends, Ryan assured her, reading her hesitation. Zain is like a brother to me, but I suspect we both could use the company. Maya's rationalization came easily. Maintaining connections with Zain's inner circle was strategic. Understanding the dynamics between these powerful men could only strengthen her position. It was business, not betrayal. The beach house was a masterpiece of understated luxury. A modernist structure of glass and stone, where every room opened to views of the turquoise Arabian Gulf. Ryan proved to be a solicitous host, providing a tour that revealed his sophisticated taste and extensive art collection. As sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, they shared an expensive bottle of wine on the terrace, their conversation growing increasingly personal. Zain values discretion above all else, Ryan observed, refilling Maya's glass. It's a necessary approach given our position, but it must be isolating for you. The observation touched a vulnerability Maya hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. Her eyes met Ryan's, and in that moment of connection, the barriers of loyalty began to crumble. The first kiss was tentative, almost experimental. Maya pulled back, conflicted, but Ryan didn't press. Instead, he spoke of loneliness, of the hollow nature of success without meaningful connection. His words echoed Maya's unspoken thoughts so precisely that when he kissed her again, she responded with an intensity that surprised them both. Their intimate encounter unfolded with the inevitability of a scene long rehearsed. Afterward, as they lay watching moonlight play across the water, Maya felt neither guilt nor remorse, only a calculating sense of expansion. She had now secured a connection to two of the four most powerful men in Abu Dhabi. I've been looking for an opportunity to give you this, Ryan said the following morning, presenting a velvet box that revealed a sapphire necklace of extraordinary beauty. It's from a historic Persian collection, over 300 years old. The color reminded me of the depth in your eyes. Maya accepted the gift with practiced grace, recognizing its significance. This wasn't merely jewelry. It was a marker of possession, a physical manifestation of their new arrangement. As Ryan fastened the clasp around her neck, she mentally cataloged the necklace's value, both monetary and strategic. The relationship established, Maya began gathering information with subtle precision. Casual questions during pillow talk about Ryan's investment strategies. Attentive listening when he took business calls in her presence. Discreet photographs of documents left briefly unattended. Each piece of information was carefully encrypted and sent to Marco as part of their growing leverage portfolio. It's all part of the plan, Maya assured herself, rationalizing betrayal as strategy. Insurance for our future. If this inside look at Maya's calculated expansion of influence has captivated you, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. The danger escalates as she sets her sights on the next member of the Royal Four. Khalil Haddad entered Maya's calculated orbit through seemingly legitimate channels. As Zain's absences stretched longer, Maya had begun accepting occasional styling consultations with other clients, an arrangement Zain had approved to maintain her professional credentials and prevent boredom. When Khalil requested her services for the launch of the Peninsula, his most ambitious development project to date, the opportunity aligned perfectly with Maya's expanding strategy. The initial consultation was conducted with appropriate professionalism. Khalil, intense and focused, outlined his vision for the event that would introduce Abu Dhabi's most luxurious residential and commercial complex to potential investors and buyers. Unlike Ryan's aristocratic refinement, Khalil possessed the driving energy of someone who had built his empire through relentless determination rather than inherited privilege. "I need everything to communicate innovation grounded in cultural authenticity," he explained, pacing his office as floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panorama of his previous architectural achievements. These investors aren't just buying property. They're buying into a vision of the future. The project required extensive preparation, multiple meetings to discuss everything from the event's color scheme to the staff uniforms. With each interaction, the dynamic between Maya and Khalil evolved. He began seeking her input on matters beyond styling, valuing her aesthetic vision and business perspective. For her part, Maya studied him with the same careful attention she had applied to Zain and Ryan, identifying his vulnerabilities and preferences. Khalil's passion was architecture, not merely as business but as art. He began offering Maya private tours of his developments, explaining technical details and design philosophies with the enthusiasm of a true devotee. During one such tour, as they stood alone on the observation deck of his newest skyscraper, the boundary between professional and personal irrevocably shifted. "You see beyond surfaces," Khalil told her, his hand brushing against hers as they gazed out at the city they both understood as a landscape of power and opportunity. "It's rare to find someone who appreciates both beauty and function." The weekend at his mountain retreat in Oman followed with inevitable progression. The relationship was different from her connections with Zain and Ryan, more intellectually engaging, focused on shared appreciation for design and structure. Khalil's gift, when it came, reflected this unique dynamic. A custom-designed diamond necklace featuring a pattern inspired by traditional Islamic architecture but rendered with contemporary precision. "One of a kind," Khalil said as he presented it. "Like the perspective you bring to my world." Maya's documentation of Khalil's world was particularly valuable. His developments involved complex negotiations with government officials, zoning exemptions, and exclusive contracts. The information she gathered about upcoming projects, land acquisitions, and financial arrangements represented significant leverage, insights that could destabilize markets or influence investment decisions if strategically deployed. As Maya expertly balanced her expanding portfolio of powerful men, Rami Bishara initially appeared to be the least promising target. The youngest of the royal four, Rami maintained a relatively low profile despite his considerable wealth and influence. His approach to business, innovative but cautious, ethical to a degree unusual in their circles, suggested he might be more resistant to manipulation. The opportunity arose through a tech conference where Maya had been engaged to style presenters. Rami's keynote address on sustainable technology required multiple preparation sessions, during which Maya discovered an unexpected dimension to the quiet tech entrepreneur. Behind his reserved exterior lay a passionate advocate for innovation that served humanitarian purposes rather than merely generating profit. "Technology should liberate, not exploit," Rami explained during one fitting session, his enthusiasm transforming his usually controlled demeanor. "We have unprecedented power to solve humanity's greatest challenges if we direct our resources appropriately." This idealism, so rare in Maya's calculated world, presented a different type of vulnerability. Rami wasn't susceptible to flattery or physical attraction in the same way as the others. His interest was piqued by Maya's genuine curiosity about his work, questions that demonstrated understanding beyond what might be expected from a stylist. Their professional relationship evolved through intellectual engagement. Maya researched his technologies, offered perspectives on how innovation might be presented more effectively to non-technical audiences, and positioned herself as a sounding board for his more visionary ideas. When Rami invited her to join a weekend yacht trip to discuss potential collaborations between technology and fashion, Maya recognized it as both opportunity and risk. Zain would be in Saudi Arabia, but being seen with another man on a yacht required careful management. The weekend unfolded differently than her experiences with Ryan and Khalil. Rami's approach was measured, thoughtful, their conversations ranging from artificial intelligence to ethical business practices before physical intimacy entered the equation. The emerald necklace he presented afterward reflected this distinctive connection. A stunning piece incorporating an innovative digital authentication system he had developed that logged the gemstone's origin, ownership history, and ethical sourcing. Beauty and integrity should coexist, Rami explained as he demonstrated the technology embedded within the exquisite piece. Maya's documentation of Rami's world yielded different but equally valuable information. Advanced knowledge of technological breakthroughs, details about pending patents, insights into upcoming partnerships with global tech giants. Each piece of information was carefully recorded and transmitted to Marco as their leverage portfolio grew increasingly diverse and powerful. Managing 4 separate relationships required extraordinary precision. Maya maintained a meticulously organized calendar, ensuring no overlap in her time with each man. She developed distinct personas tailored to each relationship. With Zain, she was supportive and adaptable. With Ryan, culturally sophisticated and emotionally available. With Khalil, aesthetically perceptive and intellectually engaging. With Rami, curious and ethically minded. The physical evidence of these relationships, gifts, photographs, messages, was managed with equal care. Jewelry was stored in a secure safe deposit box accessible only to Maya. Photographic evidence of each relationship was encrypted and backed up to servers accessible only through specialized protocols, and any physical documentation was regularly destroyed after digital preservation. The growing collection of valuable items required discreet conversion to liquid assets. Maya established connections with trusted dealers in Dubai's gold market who asked no questions when handling unique pieces. The proceeds flowed back to Manila, where Marco's ambitions expanded with each transfer. "We need another $500,000 to secure the flagship location," he insisted during one encrypted call, his tone betraying no awareness of the risks Maya was taking to fulfill his demands. "The opportunity won't wait." Maya's moral compass, already compromised, continued its steady shift. "These men spend this much on a weekend," she rationalized as she arranged the sale of a pair of diamond cufflinks Zain had given her months earlier. "They'll never miss it." But beneath this cold calculation lay a more troubling reality. Maya was no longer simply accumulating resources for a future business venture. She was addicted to the power these relationships provided, the ability to move between worlds, to influence men who influenced nations, to possess knowledge that could destroy empires. What had begun as means to an end had become an end in itself, a dangerous game with stakes she had not fully calculated. As we follow Maya's increasingly risky juggling act, remember to subscribe for the next installment of this true crime investigation. The unraveling of her carefully constructed web is about to begin, setting in motion events that will ultimately lead to her body floating in that infinity pool under the Arabian night sky. The unraveling began with a sound that shouldn't have been there, the electronic beep of Zain's private elevator accessing Maya's floor at Etihad Towers. She froze, halfway through packing away evidence of her weekend with Rami, the emerald necklace still on her dressing table. Zain wasn't due back from Riyadh for another 3 days. "Surprise," he said, appearing in her bedroom doorway, travel-weary but smiling. The negotiations concluded earlier than expected. Maya's recovery was impressive. A genuine seeming cry of delight, arms thrown around his neck, questions about his journey. But Zain's embrace lacked its usual warmth, and as he set down his briefcase, his gaze lingered on her dressing table where the emerald necklace had seconds before been hastily swept into a drawer. "New perfume?" he asked casually, moving through the apartment with deliberate attention. "No, same as always," Maya replied, following him with careful nonchalance. Zain paused in the living room, lifting a decorative pillow and inhaling subtly. "Curious. I detect something different, almost like cologne." Maya's explanation came smoothly. She had been styling several male executives for an upcoming economic forum. The scent must have transferred to her clothing or furnishings. Zain nodded, apparently satisfied, but something in his demeanor had shifted. A new reserve, a watchfulness that hadn't been there before. The following week brought other concerning developments. A new security detail appeared, ostensibly for Maya's protection given her association with one of Abu Dhabi's most prominent businessmen. The 2 men were professional, discreet, but omnipresent, accompanying her on shopping trips, positioned near cafe tables during lunch meetings, waiting outside boutiques as she selected items for clients. "I don't need this level of security," Maya protested to Zain after the third day. "Abu Dhabi is one of the safest cities in the world." Zain's response was measured, reasonable. "Your safety is paramount to me. After the incident with the American diplomat's wife last month, we can't be too careful." There had been no such incident, or at least none reported in any media Maya could access. Her encrypted calls with Marco became increasingly guarded, conducted only from public locations where background noise might confound any surveillance. "I think he's having me watched," she told Marco during one such call from a busy shopping mall. "We need to accelerate our timeline." Marco's response was immediate, untroubled by the ethical implications. "The flagship location is almost ready. Another month and we can launch. Just keep it together a little longer. Just keep it together." The phrase echoed in Maya's mind as she navigated the increasingly treacherous waters of her multiple deceptions. She maintained her relationships with careful precision. Lunch with Ryan at his private club, a styling consultation that evolved into intimacy with Khalil, encrypted messages with Rami discussing a potential fashion tech collaboration that served as pretext for their next meeting. Each man continued to believe his relationship with Maya was exclusive, or at least primary. Each continued to shower her with gifts and access to privileged information. And Maya continued to document, record, and leverage every interaction, even as the pressure mounted. The invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock embossed with gold. "The Royal Four requests the honor of your presence at the 10th anniversary celebration of Al Mumtaz Ventures." The location, Zain's 300-foot yacht, the Golden Mirage. The date, just 2 weeks away. If you're captivated by this unfolding drama, take a moment to subscribe. The deadly collision of ambition and betrayal that awaits Maya on the Golden Mirage is a cautionary tale you won't want to miss. The yacht party represented both supreme opportunity and extreme danger. All 4 men together in one setting, with Maya expected to navigate their competing claims on her attention. The guest list included 50 of the most influential people in the Middle East, royalty, business leaders, international celebrities, creating a complex social environment where discretion would be paramount yet privacy almost impossible to secure. Maya's preparation was meticulous. She studied the yacht's floor plan, identifying potential escape routes and private areas. She planned her wardrobe to allow quick changes if necessary, selecting an elegant black gown with minimal jewelry for the initial appearance. Most importantly, she rehearsed potential scenarios, ways to deflect attention, redirect conversations, maintain appropriate distance from each man while still affirming their connection. The night of the celebration arrived with picture-perfect conditions. Calm seas, comfortable temperature, a sky scattered with stars. Maya boarded with other VIP guests, her security detail remaining conspicuously absent for the first time in weeks. The Golden Mirage was truly magnificent. 3 decks of ultimate luxury floating serenely in the Persian Gulf. The main salon gleamed with marble and gold accents. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and staff circulated with champagne and delicacies prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. Maya moved through the initial reception with practiced ease, greeting acquaintances with appropriate warmth while maintaining awareness of all 4 men's locations. Zain was occupied with royal guests near the bow. Ryan conducted what appeared to be an impromptu business meeting by the bar. Khalil entertained a group of international investors on the upper deck. Rami had yet to arrive. 2 hours into the evening, with alcohol flowing freely and security protocols noticeably relaxed for the celebration, Maya made her first critical error. Having retreated to a powder room to compose herself, she emerged wearing Ryan's sapphire necklace, believing Zain was still occupied with the Saudi prince who had monopolized his attention since arrival. She failed to notice Khalil approaching from the portside corridor until he was directly before her, his expression darkening as he recognized the distinctive piece. "Interesting choice," he said, voice low but intense. "I don't recall seeing that particular necklace before." Maya's response was immediate, controlled. "A recent acquisition. I thought it complemented the dress." "Perhaps too bold for this gathering," Khalil suggested, his tone making it clear this wasn't merely a style critique. Given the host, perhaps you should change to something more appropriate? The conversation might have ended there, one awkward moment managed and contained. Had Ryan not chosen that moment to round the corner, stopping short at the sight of Maya wearing his gift in Khalil's presence. His expression shifted from surprise to comprehension with alarming speed. "Ah, I see you're wearing it," Ryan said, his aristocratic composure barely masking growing anger. "I thought we had an understanding about when that particular piece would make its public debut." Maya found herself caught between two men whose combined wealth could buy small countries, both now regarding her with dawning suspicion. Her attempt to defuse the situation might have succeeded had Rami not arrived at precisely that moment, his gaze immediately fixing on the sapphire at Maya's throat. "That's remarkable craftsmanship," Rami observed, his normally relaxed demeanor tensing slightly, "almost as distinctive as the emerald piece we discussed last weekend." The atmosphere crystallized into dangerous clarity. Three powerful men, each suddenly aware they might not possess the exclusive relationship they had believed. Maya opened her mouth to attempt damage control, but the words died as Zain's security chief approached. "Mr. Al-Fayez requests your presence in the owner's suite," he announced, his expressionless face revealing nothing about what awaited her. "All of you, gentlemen." The owner's suite occupied the entire forward section of the yacht's upper deck, a private sanctuary with panoramic views and absolute privacy. Security cameras mounted discreetly in corners would later provide silent footage of what transpired, though no audio was ever recovered. What is known is that all 5 individuals entered at 11:42 p.m. The heated discussion that followed was observed only by the exterior cameras showing animated gestures through the suite's windows. Maya's desperate attempts to maintain control of the situation were evident even without sound. Her posture alternately defensive and appeasing, her hands gesturing expansively as if trying to encompass some larger explanation that might satisfy all parties. The men's body language told its own story, initial confrontation giving way to a more unified stance as the minutes passed, as though individual grievances were being subsumed by some collective realization. At 11:57 p.m., a staff member approached the suite with a tray of drinks, catching fragments of conversation through the door before discretion compelled him to retreat. "Not just affairs, but systematic." Zain's voice, controlled but cold. "Husband in Manila." Ryan, incredulous. "All of us, simultaneously." Khalil, anger evident. "Check her financial transfers." Rami, analytical even in betrayal. The staff member's testimony would later prove crucial to investigators, providing the first indication of what truly united these 4 powerful men against Maya Santos that night. Within the suite, the full extent of Maya's deception was being uncovered in real time. Rami, the tech genius of the group, had accessed secondary devices to investigate Maya's background more thoroughly than had ever been done during her initial hiring. What they discovered destroyed any possibility of Maya talking her way out of the situation. Photos appeared on screens. Marco Santos's newly opened fashion business in Manila, a luxury boutique whose elegant logo combined the names Maya and Marco into a single brand identity. Social media posts showed the gleaming storefront, the exclusive launch party, the celebrity clients already flocking to the new designer, whose rise seemed meteoric and inexplicable. Financial records revealed transfers tracing back to accounts connected to each of the 4 men. Funds Maya had diverted from gifts, allowances, and the occasional borrowed access to investment opportunities. Most damning of all were the encrypted files Rami's team managed to access. Detailed records of each relationship, intimate details that could destroy reputations, business information that could move markets if strategically deployed. Maya had not merely been unfaithful to each man. She had been methodically documenting and exploiting their trust for nearly 2 years. The security footage showed Maya's expression changing as denial became impossible. Fear replacing calculation, desperation replacing confidence. At one point she reached for her phone, only to have it taken by Zain. Her gestures became more frantic, her posture more defensive. At 1:18 a.m., the suite door opened. Maya emerged alone, visibly distraught, tears streaming down her face. She moved quickly toward the stern of the yacht, away from the main gathering where celebrations continued, unaware of the drama that had unfolded. This was the last verified sighting of Maya Santos alive. What happened between 1:18 a.m. and 2:47 a.m., when her body was discovered floating in the infinity pool, remains the central mystery of the case. Did she seek solitude to process the collapse of her carefully constructed world? Was she followed by one or more of the men whose trust she had betrayed? Did she take her own life, or was she helped into those dark waters by hands accustomed to removing obstacles? The security cameras that might have answered these questions experienced a convenient malfunction during the critical time frame. When footage resumed at 2:25 a.m., the pool area appeared empty and undisturbed. 22 minutes later, Rafiz Nazari would make his grim discovery. As we prepare to examine the investigation that followed, consider subscribing to our channel. Detective Zain Al-Fayez's methodical pursuit of truth against the backdrop of wealth and power reveals how justice itself can be compromised when the accused control the very systems meant to hold them accountable. The discovery of Maya Santos's body triggered a carefully orchestrated sequence of events that raised Detective Zain Al-Fayez's suspicions from the very beginning. Rafiz Nazari's panicked call to the yacht security team at 2:47 a.m. resulted not in an immediate notification to authorities, but in a comprehensive lockdown of the vessel. Guests were quietly informed of a medical emergency and escorted to their cabins. The yacht's engines were engaged at 3:15 a.m., beginning the journey back to the marina rather than remaining at the scene. It wasn't until 5:30 a.m., nearly 3 hours after the discovery, that Abu Dhabi police were officially notified. By then, the Golden Mirage was docked, and Maya's body had been moved from the infinity pool to a temperature-controlled room normally used for storing perishable luxury goods. The official explanation for these actions, provided by the yacht's security chief, centered on respect for the deceased and concern about the high-profile nature of the guests on board. "We wanted to protect the dignity of the situation," he explained when questioned about the delay, "and ensure the proper authorities could handle the matter discreetly." Detective Zain Al-Fayez, assigned to the case based on her 15 years of experience navigating the complex intersection of crime and privilege in Abu Dhabi, recognized the explanation for what it was: a convenient fiction to allow time for evidence management. At 52, Kazim had developed a reputation for incorruptibility that made her both respected and feared among the elite circles where her investigations often led. Her specialized focus on crimes among the city's most powerful residents had given her a unique perspective on how wealth could obstruct justice. "The scene has been compromised," she noted to her forensic team as they boarded the yacht at 6:15 a.m. "Document everything as it is now, but be aware we're seeing what they want us to see." The initial medical examination conducted dockside suggested accidental drowning, a tragic but not suspicious end to a celebration where alcohol had flowed freely. But Dr. Farid Nasser, the experienced medical examiner who had worked with Kazim on numerous high-profile cases, immediately noted inconsistencies. "The lividity doesn't match the position she was found in," he murmured to Kazim, carefully out of earshot of the yacht's hovering security team. "And there are marks on the neck that require closer examination. I'll need her in the lab immediately." The guest interviews began while forensic teams processed the yacht. All 50 guests provided remarkably similar accounts. They had enjoyed the celebration, retired to their cabins between midnight and 1:30 a.m., and learned of the tragedy only when awakened by staff the following morning. None reported seeing Maya after approximately midnight, creating a conspicuous gap in the timeline precisely when her death occurred. The resistance from guests was palpable: subtle references to connections with government officials, mentions of impending international departures that couldn't be delayed, reminders of Abu Dhabi's reputation for safety that might be damaged by prolonged investigation. Kazim navigated these implied threats with professional detachment, systematically documenting each statement while revealing nothing of her growing suspicions. If you're following this investigation closely, make sure to subscribe now. The forensic evidence Detective Kazim is about to uncover reveals a shocking level of coordination that transforms this from a tragedy to a calculated execution. The Royal Four presented their alibis with the polished precision of men accustomed to controlling narratives. Zain Al-Fayez, as the yacht's owner and host, was interviewed first in the privacy of the owner's suite, where the confrontation with Maya had taken place hours earlier. After our discussion with Ms. Santos concluded around 1:20 a.m., I remained here, Zain stated, his composure absolute despite the circumstances. The revelations about her deception were disturbing. I needed time alone to process what we had learned. Ryan Al-Nouri and Khalil Haddad provided interlocking alibis that seemed designed to withstand scrutiny. Ryan and I retired to the cigar lounge after the unpleasant business with Maya, Khalil explained, his normally commanding presence subdued by apparent grief. We needed to discuss the potential business implications of her actions. Ryan elaborated with aristocratic precision. We remained there until approximately 3 a.m., at which point we were informed of the emergency and escorted to our respective cabins. Rami Bishra's account was characteristically technical. After leaving the owner's suite, I went directly to the yacht's satellite office. One of my companies was launching a security update that couldn't be delayed. The system logs will confirm my continuous presence there from 1:22 a.m. until I was notified of Maya's death. Each man expressed appropriate shock and regret at Maya's death. Each acknowledged the confrontation regarding her multiple relationships but emphasized that while upset, they had collectively decided to simply remove her from their business and personal circles rather than pursue any form of retribution. What troubled Kazim most was not the alibis themselves, which would be verified or disproven through evidence, but the unusual solidarity among men who had just discovered a profound betrayal. In her experience, such situations typically produced finger-pointing, accusations, and attempts to shift blame. Instead, these four men presented a united front, each account supporting the others despite the humiliation they had collectively experienced. Why would four men who just discovered a woman betrayed them all be protecting each other? She asked her lieutenant as they reviewed the initial statements. Either they've compartmentalized their emotions to an extraordinary degree, or they're hiding something together, he finished. The forensic revelations transformed the investigation within 24 hours. Dr. Nasser's comprehensive autopsy contradicted the initial assessment of accidental drowning with brutal clarity. She was dead before she entered the water, he confirmed, reviewing the detailed findings with Kazim in the sterile privacy of the medical examiner's office. Asphyxiation was the cause of death. Manual strangulation with significant force applied. The bruising patterns told an even more disturbing story. These marks on her arms and shoulders indicate she was held down by multiple individuals during the strangulation. Nasser continued, displaying high-resolution photographs of distinctive contusions. Based on the size and pattern of the bruises, I'd estimate at least 3 people restrained her while a fourth applied the fatal pressure to her throat. Toxicology results added another layer to the emerging picture of calculated violence. Her system contains significant levels of benzodiazepines, specifically, a pharmaceutical-grade sedative not legally available in the UAE, Nasser noted. The concentration suggests administration approximately 30 to 45 minutes before death, and the particular compound is not one that dissolves easily in alcohol. This was a deliberate administration, not recreational use. The time of death was established with relative precision, between 1:30 and 2:30 a.m., aligning with the window between Maya's last sighting leaving the owner's suite and the discovery of her body. But other critical evidence was conspicuously absent. Maya's phone was never recovered despite comprehensive searches of the yacht and surrounding waters. The distinctive jewelry pieces that had precipitated the confrontation, the sapphire, diamond, and emerald necklaces, were similarly missing. Most telling was the security footage. The Golden Mirage boasted a state-of-the-art surveillance system with cameras covering virtually every area of the vessel. Yet when Kazim's team reviewed the recordings, they discovered a convenient malfunction during the critical hour between 1:25 a.m. and 2:25 a.m., precisely spanning Maya's exit from the owner's suite until shortly before her body was discovered. This wasn't a crime of passion, Kazim concluded during the case briefing with her investigative team. This was a coordinated elimination. The sedative administration, multiple assailants, missing evidence, deleted security footage. Everything points to premeditation and collaboration. The investigation expanded internationally as Kazim pursued the one connection that might yield uncontaminated evidence. Marco Santos in Manila. Coordination with the Philippines National Police revealed a man whose circumstances had changed dramatically in recent months. Marco was no longer operating from the modest commercial space Maya had initially funded. Maya Marco Designs now occupied a 3-story flagship location in Manila's most exclusive shopping district. Marco himself had moved from their small apartment to a luxury penthouse with panoramic views of the city. Celebrity clients from across Southeast Asia were flocking to the brand that seemed to have emerged fully formed at the highest echelons of fashion. Mr. Santos claims he hasn't spoken with his wife in over 2 years, reported Detective Joaquin Reyes, the Manila police liaison assigned to the case. According to his statement, they separated amicably when she took the position in Abu Dhabi, and he has built his business independently. And his financial records? Kazim inquired during their secure video conference. Inconsistent with his claim, Reyes confirmed. Large transfers from various offshore accounts corresponding with Ms. Santos's time in the UAE. Most recent transfer was 3 days before her death. Approximately $350,000. The breakthrough came when Philippine authorities executed a search warrant on Marco's residence and business. Behind sophisticated encryption, forensic technicians discovered the communication system Maya had used to maintain contact with her husband throughout her time in Abu Dhabi. The evidence was comprehensive and damning. Detailed records of gifts received from each man, with estimated values and potential resale markets. Transfer confirmations for funds moved through a complex network of accounts. And most significantly, audio recordings of Maya describing intimate details of her relationships with all 4 men. "I've secured another meeting with Khalil tomorrow," Maya's voice declared in one recording dated just 2 weeks before her death. "The Peninsula Project information alone could be worth millions to the right investors if we needed to leverage it." Confronted with this evidence and facing potential conspiracy charges, Marco Santos's carefully constructed facade crumbled. His panicked cooperation revealed the full extent of the scheme he had orchestrated largely from behind the scenes. "It was supposed to be simple," he insisted during his formal interview. "Use her position with Zain to build connections, gather some investment capital, and come back to Manila to launch our business. But then she met the others, and I saw an opportunity to accelerate everything." Marco described pushing Maya to establish and maintain relationships with all 4 men simultaneously, documenting everything as insurance should any of them discover the deception. What had begun as a plan to fund a business venture had evolved into a sophisticated blackmail operation targeting some of the most powerful men in the Middle East. Maya wanted out, Marco admitted, his earlier bravado replaced by evident fear as the implications of his role became clear. After the boutique opened, she said it was too dangerous to continue. But I convinced her to maintain the relationships a little longer, just until we were fully established. The text messages recovered from Marco's devices confirmed this growing conflict. Maya's increasing concerns about surveillance and discovery had been met with Marco's insistence on one final push to secure additional funding. Her last message to him, sent hours before the yacht party, revealed a woman who recognized the danger but felt trapped by her own deceptions. "Something's not right," she had written. "Zain's security chief is watching me constantly. The invitation to this anniversary event feels like a setup. If anything happens to me, release everything we have on all of them." As Kazim assembled the evidence, the picture became increasingly clear. Maya Santos had constructed a web of deception so intricate it could only collapse catastrophically. The 4 men she had manipulated, who collectively controlled banking, energy, real estate, and technology across the UAE, had discovered her betrayal and responded with the same coordinated precision that had made them successful in business. Yet proving their direct involvement in her murder remained frustratingly difficult. The alibis, while suspicious in their convenience, were supported by yacht staff who consistently placed each man in his claimed location. The physical evidence had been compromised by the delayed reporting and controlled access to the scene. And no witness had come forward to contradict the official narrative that Maya's death was a tragic accident following an emotionally charged confrontation. As Detective Kazim prepared to present her findings to the prosecutor's office, she understood the formidable obstacles to justice in a case where the suspects controlled significant portions of the economy, and maintained connections throughout the government. The Brotherhood pact that had made the royal force so successful in business now served a darker purpose, ensuring collective protection against the consequences of what Kazim had become convinced was a carefully orchestrated execution. The next phase of this investigation will reveal how wealth and power can subvert even the most dedicated pursuit of justice. Subscribe now to follow Detective Kazim's determined efforts to break through the Brotherhood's unified defense and expose the truth about what really happened on the Golden Mirage that fateful night. Detective Zain Kazim understood that breaking the united front presented by the Royal Four would require strategic precision. After weeks of forensic analysis, background investigation, and careful evidence compilation, she decided to target Rami Bashara, the youngest, most idealistic, and potentially most vulnerable member of the Brotherhood. "I'm offering you a singular opportunity, Mr. Bashara," Kazim said, seated across from Rami in a private interview room at Abu Dhabi Police Headquarters. No lawyers were present, a condition Rami had surprisingly agreed to for this preliminary discussion. "Your colleagues believe your unified story will protect all of you equally. I'm here to tell you that mathematics doesn't support that assumption." Rami's expression remained carefully neutral. "I've already provided my statement, Detective. I was working in the yacht's office when Maya died. It was a tragic accident following an emotional confrontation." Instead of arguing, Kazim methodically placed photographs on the table between them, crime scene images showing the bruising patterns on Maya's body, enhanced security footage capturing the four men's synchronized movements before the camera malfunction, financial records documenting Maya's methodical exploitation of each relationship. "For men, for separate points of vulnerability," Kazim continued calmly. "Probability dictates that someone will break first. The first to cooperate receives consideration. The others face the full consequences." She saved the most damaging evidence for last, a recovered partial backup of the security footage showing Rami himself following Maya onto the pool deck, his expression uncharacteristically hard as he spoke into a phone. "Your tech skills are impressive, Mr. Bashara," Kazim observed, "but no deletion is ever truly complete. Our forensic team managed to recover fragments of what you attempted to erase." The color drained from Rami's face as he viewed the timestamp, 1:51 a.m., precisely within the window of Maya's murder. The carefully constructed alibi placing him in the yacht's office throughout the critical period was now demonstrably false. The strategy worked. After 6 hours of interrogation, with promised considerations for cooperation, Rami's composure finally cracked. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "We just wanted to scare her, make her leave." The blackmail attempt was the final straw. His partial confession implicated the others while minimizing his own involvement, a predictable self-preservation instinct that Kazim had counted on. More valuable than the confession itself was Rami's technical assistance in recovering the deleted security footage, carefully preserved in hidden backups that only someone with his expertise could access. The restored footage transformed the case, providing visual evidence of all four men confronting Maya by the pool after the initial meeting in the owner's suite. Though there was no audio, the body language was unmistakable. For powerful figures surrounding a single woman, their postures clearly threatening as she backed toward the pool edge, hands raised in what appeared to be either placation or defense. If you've been following Maya's tragic story closely, subscribe now for this final chapter. The evidence Detective Kazim has uncovered will reveal how the deadliest weapon in the Royal Four arsenal wasn't their wealth or influence, but their unbreakable brotherhood. With Rami's cooperation and the recovered footage, Kazim assembled a detailed timeline of Maya's final hours. 1:18 a.m. Security cameras captured Maya leaving the owner's suite visibly distraught, moving quickly toward the stern of the yacht away from the main celebration. 1:26 a.m. Maya was seen on a private deck area making what appeared to be a phone call, her body language suggesting extreme agitation as she repeatedly looked over her shoulder. 1:40 a.m. Zain was recorded instructing his security chief to dispatch the team to different areas of the yacht, a directive that effectively removed potential witnesses from key locations including the infinity pool area. 1:52 a.m. All four men were visible on the recovered footage confronting Maya by the pool area, The footage showed her backing away as they approached from different angles, effectively cutting off all escape routes. 2:05 to 2:25 a.m. The deliberately deleted segment of footage, which Rami claimed contained the actual murder but refused to recover, citing technical impossibility. 2:47 a.m. Staff member Rafiz Nazari discovered Maya's body floating in the infinity pool. The missing puzzle piece came from Manila, where Marco Santos provided full testimony in exchange for immunity from prosecution. According to Marco, Maya had made a final desperate phone call to him at approximately 1:26 a.m. yacht time. "They know everything," she had told him, her voice tight with controlled panic. "I'm going to try to negotiate, but if anything happens to me, release everything." Within minutes of that call, Marco received an automated file transfer, the prearranged insurance package containing all the compromising information Maya had gathered on all four men, financial details that could trigger regulatory investigations, personal information that could destroy marriages and reputations, business secrets that could collapse stock values overnight. Armed with this leverage, Maya had apparently decided to make one final play rather than simply fleeing the yacht. According to Rami's partial confession, she had initiated a blackmail attempt during the pool confrontation. "Pay me 10 million or I release everything. The affairs, the business information, everything," she had demanded, believing her carefully gathered leverage would force their compliance. She believed her leverage would save her, Detective Kazim later observed in her case summary. Instead, it sealed her fate. The four men, who had built empires through strategic decision-making, conducted a cold calculation in those moments by the infinity pool. The financial cost of paying Maya was negligible. 10 million represented a fraction of their collective wealth. But the precedent of submitting to blackmail was unacceptable. More importantly, the brotherhood that had sustained their success for decades demanded a unified response to this threat. Their decision was unanimous and executed with the same efficiency that characterized their business ventures. According to Rami's testimony, Zain had administered the sedative under the pretense of offering Maya a drink to continue negotiations calmly. As the drug took effect, reducing her physical resistance, Ryan and Khalil restrained her while Zain applied the fatal pressure to her throat. Rami's role had been to ensure the security systems would show no record of the event. The body was placed in the infinity pool to suggest accidental drowning, a scenario they believed would be accepted without question given the circumstances of a yacht party with abundant alcohol. What they hadn't anticipated was the forensic evidence that would contradict this narrative, or Rafiz Nazari's discovery of the body before they could more thoroughly stage the scene. With the evidence now overwhelming, arrests were made. The four men were taken into custody discreetly, without the public spectacle typically associated with murder charges. The unprecedented scandal sent shockwaves through Abu Dhabi's business community. International media coverage focused heavily on Maya's manipulation and blackmail attempt, often portraying her as the primary villain in a tragedy of her own making. Behind the scenes, the machinery of privilege began working immediately. Legal teams comprising the region's most expensive attorneys initiated complex maneuvers designed to minimize damage. Political pressure mounted from various quarters, business partners concerned about market stability, government officials worried about foreign investment implications, royal connections anxious to contain potential embarrassment. Detective Kazim watched with growing frustration as justice began its inevitable compromise. Plea deals were negotiated through powerful connections. Lesser charges were accepted for Khalil, Ryan, and Rami, acknowledging their presence but recasting their roles as witnesses rather than active participants. Zain, perhaps recognizing the mathematical advantages of taking primary responsibility, accepted the central role with the understanding that his sentence would be minimized through a combination of legal maneuvering and political influence. For powerful men can collectively eliminate a woman who threatened them, and still protect each other even in guilt, Kazim noted bitterly during a private conversation with her lieutenant. The brotherhood that made them successful in business serves them equally well in murder. The aftermath unfolded with predictable privilege. Zain Al-Fayez was sentenced to 7 years for manslaughter, immediately reduced to 3 years through a series of legal appeals. He served this time not in Abu Dhabi's central prison but in a luxury rehabilitation center where amenities included a private suite, personal chef, and continued business access through carefully monitored communications. Al-Fayez Global Energy continued operations under family management, experiencing only a temporary dip in stock value before returning to its previous performance levels. Ryan, Khalil, and Rami avoided incarceration entirely, receiving suspended sentences and community service requirements that were largely symbolic. Each paid substantial financial settlements to Maya's family in the Philippines, compensation that, while significant to the recipients, represented negligible amounts to men of their wealth. Their businesses suffered temporary setbacks but demonstrated the resilience that comes with diversified holdings and powerful connections. Within 18 months, all three had resumed their positions at the helm of their respective empires, the scandal relegated to an unfortunate footnote in their otherwise successful careers. Marco Santos experienced a dramatically different outcome. With his immunity securing freedom from charges related to Maya's exploitation schemes, he attempted to continue operating Maya Marco Designs in Manila. But without Maya's connections and continuous funding, the business model proved unsustainable. Within 6 months, the flagship store closed, followed by a series of lawsuits from suppliers and investors. Marco was subsequently arrested on separate fraud charges related to misrepresentation to investors, ultimately receiving a 10-year prison sentence in a standard Philippine correctional facility. Detective Zaina Kazim's career trajectory changed following the case. Despite solving a high-profile murder, her insistence on pursuing maximum charges against all 4 men created political discomfort that resulted in her transfer to a less prominent department. Her specialized focus on crimes among the elite was reassigned to a detective with reputation for greater discretion in handling sensitive cases. Among the evidence items cataloged and eventually archived was a simple jade bracelet, the only possession Maya had brought with her from Manila, a gift from her mother before leaving the Philippines. Listed as evidence item number 37 in the closed case file, the bracelet represented the only part of Maya Santos that wasn't ultimately controlled, possessed, or destroyed by the men who had entered her life. 2 years after Maya's death, an international investigative journalist secured a rare interview with the now-demoted Detective Kazim. Her assessment of the case had lost none of its clarity despite the professional consequences she had suffered. This was never about love or even sex, Kazim explained, seated in her modest new office far from the prestigious headquarters where she had once commanded respect. It was about power, possession, and for men who viewed this woman as property they jointly owned. When she attempted to leverage her position against them, she violated the only principle they truly respected: their exclusive right to control what they considered theirs. Despite the scandal, the Royal Four Brotherhood continued. Their collective business interests expanded to include new investments in emerging markets across Southeast Asia. Their reputation had been damaged but not destroyed. Their wealth remained intact, and their influence in Abu Dhabi's development continued largely uninterrupted. The annual gathering on Zain's yacht still occurred, though now without the photographers and social media coverage that had once documented these exclusive events. The Golden Mirage itself had been renamed and redesigned, the infamous infinity pool replaced with an elaborate entertainment area that eliminated any physical reminder of Maya Santos. Among foreign workers in the Gulf states, particularly women in vulnerable positions, Maya's story became a cautionary tale, a warning about the dangers of believing one could outmaneuver the entrenched power structures that governed everything from business to personal relationships in the region. The deadliest mistake was believing she could outsmart men who had spent decades controlling everything in their world, Kazim concluded in her final assessment. In the end, the only thing they valued more than their possessions was their brotherhood. When forced to choose between their individual relationships with Maya and their collective bond with each other, there was never any real question about which would prevail. Maya Santos, who had risen from the slums of Manila to the luxury penthouses of Abu Dhabi through ambition and calculation, ultimately discovered the limits of leverage against entrenched power. The necklaces that had symbolized her conquests became evidence of her exploitation. The men she believed she controlled proved to be her executioners. And the system she had tried to manipulate for personal gain demonstrated its unyielding protection of those who truly controlled it. As this investigation comes to a close, I hope you'll subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of how wealth, power, and privilege intersect with justice around the world. Every day, people like Detective Zain Al-Fayez fight to hold the powerful accountable, often at great personal cost. Their stories, like Maya's, reveal the complex moral landscape where ambition meets opportunity, where leverage confronts power, and where justice struggles against the immovable force of privilege.